Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, is a religious leader whose life story transcends borders, languages, and ideologies. As the first pope from Latin America, the first Jesuit, and the first non-European in over a millennium to hold the office, his papacy represents a profound moment of change and introspection for the Catholic Church. Guided by simplicity, inclusiveness, and an unshakable commitment to the poor and marginalized, Francis has emerged as one of the most influential spiritual and moral leaders of the 21st century. His life is a powerful narrative of faith forged in humility, tested through adversity, and exercised with compassion. Jorge Mario Bergoglio was born on December 17, 1936, in the Flores neighborhood of Buenos Aires, Argentina. He was the eldest of 5 children born to Mario José Bergoglio, a railway accountant of Italian origin, and Regina Maria Sivori, a homemaker with strong Catholic roots. His upbringing was deeply shaped by immigrant values, hard work, devotion to family, and the Catholic faith. From a young age, Jorge showed signs of intellectual curiosity and a reflective nature. He attended a technical secondary school, where he earned a diploma as a chemical technician. Though he briefly worked in a laboratory, his inner spiritual inclinations soon took precedence. A pivotal moment occurred when he suffered a severe lung infection at the age of 21, requiring the removal of part of his lung. During this period of convalescence, he experienced a deep spiritual awakening. In 1958, Bergoglio entered the Society of Jesus, beginning an intensive period of religious, philosophical, and theological training. The Jesuits are known for their intellectual rigor, global missionary work, and vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Bergoglio's Jesuit identity would come to profoundly shape his worldview, with its emphasis on discernment, education, and a spirituality of service. He completed studies in humanities in Santiago, Chile, and later earned licentiates in philosophy and theology in Argentina. He taught literature, psychology, and theology in Jesuit schools, reflecting his belief in the formative power of education. He was ordained a priest on December 13, 1969. In 1973, at the age of 36, he was appointed provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina, an exceptionally young age for such responsibility. He led the Jesuits during the early years of the military dictatorship, a time marked by violent repression and widespread human rights abuses. The Argentine Dirty War, 1976 to 1983, was a dark chapter in the nation's history. Tens of thousands of people were disappeared by the military junta. Bergoglio's leadership during this period has been the subject of complex debate. While some accused him of not publicly condemning the regime or protecting fellow Jesuits who were detained, others point to his covert efforts to save lives, such as securing the release of political prisoners and sheltering those in danger. Bergoglio himself has acknowledged his shortcomings during this time, later stating that he lacked the courage to speak out more forcefully. This self-awareness would later influence his emphasis on humility, transparency, and mercy in his papacy. Following a period of reflection and exile from prominent Jesuit leadership, Bergoglio was appointed Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires in 1992 by Pope John Paul II. He became Archbishop in 1998 and was made a cardinal in 2001. As cardinal, Bergoglio stood out for his modesty and deep concern for the poor. He chose to live in a small apartment, cooked his own meals, and regularly visited the slums of Buenos Aires, known as Villas Miserias. He became an advocate for social justice, speaking out against economic inequality, consumerism, and governmental corruption. His homilies often emphasized humility, charity, and solidarity with the suffering. In contrast to the political power and clerical privilege that had historically surrounded the Catholic Church in Argentina, Bergoglio represented a more grounded, pastoral vision of the faith. After Pope Benedict XVI's historic resignation in 2013, the first papal abdication in over 600 years, a conclave of cardinals was convened. On March 13, 2013, Bergoglio was elected pope after just 5 ballots. He chose the name Francis, after Saint Francis of Assisi, the medieval saint known for his radical commitment to poverty and peace. His election broke several precedents. He was the first Jesuit pope, the first from the global south, and the first pope not born in Europe in more than a millennium. His first appearance on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica was marked by a humble request. Rather than delivering the traditional papal blessing, he bowed his head and asked the crowd to pray for him. From the start of his papacy, Pope Francis made it clear that he intended to shift the tone and priorities of the Church. His major themes include 1. The Church of the Poor. Francis has consistently advocated for a church that is poor and for the poor. He has spoken against the idolatry of money and denounced global economic systems that marginalize the vulnerable. He frequently visits prisons, refugee camps, and impoverished neighborhoods, locations often avoided by past popes. 2. Environmental stewardship. In 2015, he released Laudato Seris, an encyclical that called on humanity to combat climate change and environmental destruction. He argued that ecological degradation and poverty are interconnected issues, calling for a unified moral and scientific response. 3. Pastoral care over dogma. Francis has emphasized the importance of pastoral sensitivity rather than rigid doctrine. His famous phrase, "Who am I to judge?" in response to a question about gay priests, marked a significant rhetorical shift. He has encouraged compassion toward divorced and remarried Catholics, women who have had abortions, and others often marginalized in Catholic teaching. 4. Synodality and decentralization. Francis has promoted synodality, shared governance, and collective discernment as a model for church decision-making. He believes that the Holy Spirit speaks not only through the hierarchy, but also through the people of God, including laity and women. 5. Vatican reform and transparency. Francis has worked to reform the Vatican's often criticized bureaucracy, known as the Roman Curia. He has established financial transparency offices, overhauled personnel practices, and sought to make the Vatican Bank more accountable. Pope Francis's vision has not been without opposition. A number of conservative bishops and theologians have publicly criticized his approach, accusing him of diluting doctrine and creating confusion within the Church. The synods on the family, youth, and the Amazon raised contentious issues like married priests, LGBTQ inclusion, and women's roles in the Church. His handling of the sexual abuse crisis has been mixed. While he has met with victims, apologized publicly, and implemented new accountability mechanisms, critics argue that systemic changes have been slow, and that some bishops implicated in cover-ups remain influential. Francis has become a global diplomatic figure, often weighing in on world affairs. He helped mediate the restoration of US-Cuba relations, called for peace in Syria and Ukraine, and criticized rising nationalism and xenophobia. His messages often transcend religious boundaries, addressing secular audiences with moral clarity and moral urgency. Now in his late 80s, Pope Francis continues to lead despite health challenges, including surgery and limited mobility. Yet he remains active, issuing encyclicals, convening synods, and traveling to conflict zones. His legacy is already taking shape. He has reshaped the papal image from that of a sovereign monarch to that of a servant leader. He is often seen not merely as the head of the Catholic Church, but as a moral voice for the planet. He has brought to the papacy a deeply human dimension. He smiles, jokes, embraces children, and meets people where they are. In this he reflects the gospel message of love, humility, and mercy. Pope Francis's life is a narrative of transformation of a boy from Buenos Aires who became a spiritual father to billions. His legacy is not one of revolution through doctrine, but of renewal through love, listening, and service. In a world rife with division, inequality, and spiritual longing, Pope Francis calls for a church that builds bridges instead of walls, and a humanity that cares for both soul and soil. As history continues to unfold, his papacy will be remembered as a time when the Church sought to return to its roots, the simplicity of the gospel, the dignity of every person, and the radical call to serve.